Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. And so it is. We get into a Balls McWednesday. To me, the week is already flying past because we're walking on sunshine. Katrina and the waves around these parts, buddy. We are all in a good mood. And I am going to remind all of us as to why it is we should embrace the hell out of that. It's been a good week. It's going to be another good week because we can't lose this Saturday. Not that we would based on the evidence we have before us, but others can and others will, and we'll watch it comfortably in our homes with no fear of a pending game or result that we need to know. We're good. Everything's good here. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. You're driving about town. You're listening on 93.3 FM. Thanks for doing so. By doing so, you're supporting the only locally owned and operated radio station in all of Tallahassee. That makes you a good man or a woman, and we appreciate that. You're also watching on Warchant TV, which we appreciate greatly. Thanks for supporting local there, too. Warchant.com, Warchant TV, the Jeff Cameron Show on pod and on radio. My goodness gracious, all the options, they're bountiful. I was laughing this morning when I went through checking the various websites that I use to prep and reading articles about teams, our team, other teams, and games that are coming up this weekend and getting profiles and looking at betting profiles and all those kinds of things as well. And I happened upon On3's article, which documents ESPN's rankings of the ACC. That would be the football conference, in this case known as the ACC. Miami ranked number 1, Florida State ranked number 2, Georgia Tech 3, Clemson 4. Georgia Tech and Clemson play each other this week. And if you were just talking about resumes and the eye test and the numbers, you would say that that is correct. You would be impressed by both Florida State and Miami, and you could probably put them in any order you wanted. Just that order, though. Florida State 1, Miami 2, or Miami 1, Florida State 2. None of the others would be in contention. Not SMU for sure. Not Clemson, not Georgia Tech. We could go on about this. Not Louisville, not Pitt, not BC, not anybody else. There we sit comfortably, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's why I'm resting easy as the week goes on. That's why I feel so good. And that's also because I know that Florida State's going to win the next game they play too. So these are just days upon days of victory and smiles and good feelings about the world of college football. And you need not lose sight of that on a Balls McWednesday as we sit on September the 10th.
Yeah, this is the good part about winning that first game of the year is you get the inverted season, the bowl game followed by a preseason. We are now in the preseason for Florida State football, effectively speaking. You get it with other teams, and you get it to work out against other teams like the scripted practices that they have in the NFL, and they're on television, so that's cool. And there's a 3:30 kick next week, which is also really cool because the Miami-Florida game is at 7 or 7:30, depending upon what they do with the 6-day option. So you're going to get to watch that as well. I was really worried it was going to be a 6 p.m. CW network or a 9 p.m. ACC network game, something weird like that. 3:30 for Kent State, that'll do very, very nicely. You just get to watch the sport now. Watch other people play the sport. And honestly, if you feel good about the Virginia result, I want to see it. I want to see them execute it and go win that game. You got 3 straight Saturdays, folks. I mean, you got 3 straight Saturdays where you're going to be watching an awful lot of football, either in the noon window before we kick at 3:30 or the prime time after we're done in the 3:30. You got this weekend, totally. Friday night at Virginia means you have a total Saturday of college football. Heady times. This is really nice. This is as good as I would have hoped. If you said that we start 2-0, how are people feeling? This is as good as I could have possibly imagined.
Well, this is the feeling. This is 100% the feeling. If we start 2-0, could you feel any better than you feel right now? No, because the way that they're 2-0 is the bigger part of being 2-0. The way that they're 2-0 is thorough, is convincing, is revelatory, is something that you can get behind because you know it has staying power. It's how you play, how well you execute, what the scores of those games were affect your feelings. The players' relative health affect the way that you view the team through 2 games and what's to come. All of it. What else has happened in college football is something that you consider as well. So I think like within all of that, within the scope of that, It'd be impossible to feel any better than you feel right now. And yet I get it because I've seen both types of fans this week, and that's to be expected. When you have some success, you get the group that will revel in it and allow it to wash over them and celebrate it and be excited about it and share it with their fellow fans of said team and talk about it. And then you get the group that is cautious because they now have ratcheted expectations thanks to success. You get the group that is nervous that success brings something more and something more in the way of vitality, meaning like we have more to lose now that we've been successful. We have more to worry about now that we're a good team. We have more to gain, thus lose, if we don't live up to this newfound expectation that was born by the successes of these last 2 weeks. All of the things, and they get very nervous. They want to protect it. They want to put it in a box, and they say things like, well, now let's hold on. It's only been a couple of weeks. You don't know. You don't know, like, what if we lose by 50 to Miami? What if? What if? We're not going to lose by 50 to Miami. You know that. You say that to say it. You don't believe that's going to happen. You could lose to Miami, though. What, are you going to go through a season scared to death about big games? No. You got to look at it the other way. This is not a classic argument of glasses half full, half empty. No, sir. This is the reality of the situation. Why is the Miami game potentially going to be a big game? It's potentially going to be a good game or big game, reminiscent of the rivalry of yesteryear, as I like to say, because both teams might very well be undefeated and College Game Day will be here. Well, what's the reason for that? Because you beat Alabama's ass. So embrace the hell out of the expectation of what that game might look like. Now, Miami still has to take care of business 2 weeks in a row. USF, much tougher contest than people thought it was going to be before the year began. Florida will be fighting for their lives, possibly. We'll see. So they've got two bigger tests. We've got the bye week, followed by a scrimmage.
Right. Followed by a Friday game against Virginia where we have plenty of rest. But what Miami has to do is put all that stuff on film. If they didn't already against Notre Dame, they have to air it out for these next couple of weeks in order to accrue those wins. It's fair to say that Florida State might not have to do anything close to that in order to get to that particular home date in an undefeated spot. Also, this is one thing that I hear College Game Day, and I'm always the guy who's like, who cares? But we must care. Because TV ratings equal dollars now. TV ratings in the ACC formula literally equal a dollar payout to the university. So when we got the 3:30 kick, I thought, great time slot. ACC network, not so hot for TV viewing. You know, you prefer not to be on the ACC network because you don't score ratings points. But if you were to get the 8 p.m. prime time off of College Game Day, because ESPN will air, and I think it's 7:30 these days is their time slot for it, but ESPN would love to put us in that primetime slot for the Miami game. They always have, even when we weren't very good, and Miami wasn't very good. That means more money to the university. So now when these 14-day announcements or 6-day options come out, it's super important to see what time slot we get because it means money.
I have said over and over again since the start of this year that I wanted us to play well for the obvious reasons, like you need to play well. Playing well means money, sure. It means better recruiting classes. It means the chances of future seasons that are rewarding. But it especially is true now because of that system that is in place, brought on by the lawsuit that we had against the ACC and won. In essence, won. And so we celebrate these matchups in these moments. And absolutely, I care deeply about game. I want Game Day to be here 4 times. People get so caught up in their anger at Kirk Herbstreit and ESPN. And I'm not telling you that you won't forever be upset by what happened with the snub. You ought to be. It was unprecedented. Florida State got screwed in a way that no school had ever been screwed before. That will linger a very long time. Guess what? Be pragmatic. Understand the circumstances and the situation. The circumstances and the situation tell you that even though that's true, you still need that network. Oh, do you ever need that network to decide to be here more often than not, to care about the vitality, the importance of Florida State football and its games? Because all of that money that you're bringing in because you're on in primetime and nationwide games that people can't wait to watch, because you're dubbed as a team viable for those kinds of contests and promoted. Nobody promotes Nobody promotes like ESPN. My God, do they beat you over the head with whatever it is they're going to be showing that week. And if that whatever it is you, it's a giant PR campaign that benefits you financially. It benefits you with enrollment. It benefits you with future games and future contests and improvements to the stadium and the ability to pay coaches, all of it to shrink the gap between what we are and what the SEC is from a financial distribution vantage point. And that's why you should want game day here every week. Besides, who doesn't want to see a guy who's relatively insecure and suffering through terrible anxiety problems like Kirk Herbstreit have to come here and deal with that every week? Wouldn't that be hilarious? Wouldn't you then revel in the awkwardness of all of that?
Yeah, that's totally fair. The thing I'd say is you definitely want to nail the game day appearance if you can get it for the Miami game, because they won't be back on campus this year. Your remaining home schedule demands that they won't be back on campus this year.
They could be at Clemson, though. They could be at Clemson.
It could be at Clemson, and so you could therefore get a roadie, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, buddy.
Likely not getting Florida. Certainly not getting Virginia Tech at home. NC State's not going to do it for you. So you kind of need this one and then hope for the fact that maybe there's a bounce back for Clemson. And for whatever reason, I haven't looked at the schedule that weekend, but there isn't a middling SEC game where they could go to the Grove or something to watch Lane lose his third game of the year. That would be the hope. But you want this one. You need this one. Those ratings points mean the difference in dollars because it's whatever 3-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio in terms of football dollars to basketball dollars in terms of the success initiatives through the ACC contract.
I'm just duly noting at the outset of today's Balls McWednesday show, we're moving on. We're at the midway point. We're doing the cliche, getting over the hump. We're putting last week's games behind us. All of the games are now done, shelved. The NFL is done. College is done. We all look ahead to the next week's games. This is the day that starts really in earnest because you're looking at bets for tomorrow. At least I am. You're looking at bets. And by the way, we have a decent Thursday night game tomorrow. You're looking at the Friday slate. You've obviously got all of Saturday and Sunday to be able to take in at your leisure because you don't have to worry about Florida State. I'm doing all those things today. I do that in bulk today. I'm looking for advantages with player props that come out today and all those kinds of things. And I'm doing so unburdened by some weight of disappointment and frustration. I don't have any of it. And we only had it a year ago. We only had that and nothing else. You couldn't escape from under it. You could not get away from your bitter disappointment of the existence of Florida State football. It harmed you in every way, shape, or form last year. Every time you thought about a college football slate, you were forced to fall back in a stupor, realizing that your program, my program, our program was pure cheeks. Nothing but big, fat Roseanne cheeks. It was the worst. Every game, it was colored by that reality. You couldn't do what I'm doing today, which is to look ahead and to say, you know what, I kind of like that matchup. Well, that's a good matchup. By the way, he's going to have a great game. You know, they could lose that game. No, because the second you would start to do that last year, you'd go, we suck. Who cares? That's what you'd do. You'd go, well, that Texas-Georgia matchup is kind of interesting. No, it's not. We suck. Who cares? That's what you would do over and over again.
Yeah, I'd say, if Atlanta loses this weekend, the Bucs' path to winning the NFC South is in pretty good shape. Or earlier in the season, I'd say, maybe Ohtani pulls a hammy and we can win the pennant. Because if we win the pennant, I think we're going to win the World Series. It wasn't about, man, if Mike really wanted to run this play off of what he set up.
No. It was the worst. It really was the worst. And I'm not wallowing in that now. No, I'm furthest thing from it. I'm celebrating that this is not that. That this time is not that time. This time came from that time, ironically, but it is not that time. And so anytime we go back on it now, I say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. We shall never forget it, but we will move on. We don't have to think too much about what it was because we are in the now, and in the now is a good place to be. You have a healthy team, relatively. You have a team that plays so very hard. That doesn't figure to change. I don't know too many teams that I've ever watched play as hard as this team has played that suddenly stopped doing so. because it takes a real buy-in to ever get to a place where you play as hard as this team has played. And I know you might say, well, of course they're going to show up against Alabama. They're worried about getting embarrassed. And their pride was challenged, and the program's reputation was on the line, and they were at home, and it's the first game of the year. No, I'm talking about last week. I'm talking about this past Saturday told me what I needed to know about the mentality of this team. It's not that they did anything that makes me believe they're going to win the national championship last Saturday, because that result was preordained, really. Those two teams are not of a similar ilk. One can do whatever it wants to do with a foe of that nature, and that's okay. But you have to care so much to play that hard in a game that is preordained. Like, to play that hard tells me a lot about who you are. So I know that when we see our Noles again, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, the game is not in question yet again. But they'll play hard. They're going to play really hard because that's who they are. We don't have to worry about that. Oh, did we have to worry about it a year ago? Yes, we did. Not a single game this year will that be the reason that Florida State wins or loses. Well, I guess it would be the reason they win, but it won't be a reason for a loss. They'll get out executed. Somebody will be able to stop Tommy from running the football. Something will happen where their personnel will beat your personnel, and you'll be forced to ask the question, well, do we have to do a better job of recruiting here, or there, or what do we got to do to change that part of it up, because that's a problem, the line of scrimmage, whatever it might be. But those are football reasons.
Yeah.
Football reasons.
Well, this is the opposite experience of last year in this way as well. Last year, you watched a ton of teams and you said, well, they play harder than we do. Well, they play smarter than we do. Damn. And then this year, it's, well, they don't play as hard as we do. They don't look as tough as we do. They don't play as clean football-wise as we do. Damn, we got a good team. It's the total opposite experience.
Think about it, too. I mean, they're not out there committing a bunch of stupid penalties. You know, when you talk about playing smart, you're looking at what kinds of penalties do you commit. There are effort penalties that I don't have a problem with. Bang plays that could go either way, and whatever.
Oh yeah, the Edwin Joseph pass interference in week 1, no problem there. That's a good penalty. That's a smart penalty.
It was a really smart penalty. That wasn't just a good penalty. That was a smart penalty. That was a heady penalty. That was the things that a smart team does. That's a walk-in touchdown on 4th down that changes the momentum of the game. That's a kid going, not going to happen. You got me beat. Well done. You got me beat, but you're not going to score. How many times have you been watching a game and thought, tackle him? And then somebody says, well, it'll be interference. Yes, it won't be a touchdown. Tackle him. I mean, he's going to score. You're beat. And you see it from smart teams. And you're like, see, they get it. When that happened, I was oddly overjoyed, and it gave them a 1st down on 4th down. And I went, that's all right. I'm slapping 5 with people next to me. I'm looking at my fellow Noles in the stands going, that's what I'm talking about. That was wicked smart. Good job, buddy. That's a walk-in touchdown. Screw him. Earn it, Alabama. Or kick your field goal. That's what you'll do. You'll kick your field goal and like it and think about what would have been.
Here's your field goal.
Yeah, I mean, I did. It was a play I brought up to my dad after the game. I'm like, how about that interference? That was beautiful. Well done. Defensive holding, whatever they actually called it. Yeah. I long for little moments like that where it's revealed. You're like, okay, you're thinking the game too. You're thinking the game too. What a good day today is. Beautiful outside. We don't have any games to worry about. We're just going to be chilling. Just chilling. Tom's going out of town at the end of this week. We've got some schedule manipulation to do here on the
JC. You're working that in off of the good graces of the football star. Like, so you feeling good? That's awesome. We're going to be some changes to the schedule
this week. Well, no, there is. I mean, obviously you're encountering one right now. This has less to do with Tom going out of town and more to do with some technical issues that the station's going through, and we wanted to make sure that the show was intact and solid and ready to roll. So we did it from home. This is how it works. But
yeah, you headlines watchers yesterday, you know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, and it's not, I'm not mad at anybody here at the radio station. We're going through a transition from one way of being to a new way of being, and all the technical stuff can't be done at the same time. And sometimes you run into some gremlins, some things that you don't anticipate, but you got to find a way to survive. And that's what we're doing right here. A little surviving.
Hey, if the Gremlins are going to rear their head, do so on a bye week and not Miami week. That's the key. So I like the situational awareness. They're the Edwin Joseph Gremlins. They realize, hey, we're going to get beat, but let's get beat on our terms. Okay, let's make them earn it.
Did you happen to read Chris Lowe's piece yesterday?
I rarely do. I know he's on 3 now, but a lot of times it's rah SEC stuff. But every once in a while, he can sneak up on you and get you feeling it in the emotional department.
Yeah, no, he's good. He's talented at what he does. This is an SEC piece too. You and I were talking off the air earlier that there's a piece that's out there that I read earlier today that's really well done about the world forever changing on this date, 24 years ago, before entering into a much different world. Obviously, I'm talking about 9/11, but the article is written from the vantage point of the Monday Night Football game that was played before 9/11 on the 10th. And what the world looked like then, a snapshot then, and the way our view of everything changed forevermore. It's a deep article, an interesting one too, and a reminder of a lot of things. To be appreciative that you're here for starters, and that there are people that you love and that you watch these games with that are still here with you, and all of that. But Lowe's article is an article about Herschel Walker making his debut. And it bothers me that the headline is nearly 50 years after Herschel Walker's debut, the Georgia-Tennessee rivalry still endures. That's the headline, everybody. Those of you of a certain age, that is a kick to the cojones. I'll read that headline again. Nearly 50 years after Herschel Walker's debut, What? Well, when you read the article, you realize the headline's a little misleading, as headlines want to be these days in the era of clicks. But it's not that misleading. It's been 45 years since Herschel Walker was introduced to the college football world. It was against Rocky Top in the 1980 season opener, where Walker and Georgia launched an improbable journey to an unbeaten season and national championship, thrusting Walker into almost mythical status. That's how the article begins. So it's 45 years.
It's not on Lowe. The headline is usually done by somebody else.
Of course.
That is an egregious choice, disingenuous on that title. 45 is not 50. Nearly 50, I'll give you 48. 47's a stretch.
I might give you 47, Tom, if we were defining terms. I might.
Yeah, right. What's nearly relative to 40? All right, I'll give you 47. 45? Stop it. You could just say 45 years after Herschel Walker. I mean, that has the same panache to it.
Just so you know, that I took temporary solace when I saw that it was 45 and not 50. But then my brain went, hey, dumbass, it's been 45 years since you watched Herschel Walker against Tennessee. Because unlike you, Tom, I remember it. You weren't born. You wouldn't be born for another 6 years. I not only was born, but was actively watching college football in a way that still endures. And I have it etched indelibly thinking, look at this son of a bitch. He's huge. Who's going to tackle that guy?
Yeah, that's different. What I can remember is when Florida, about my first football memory is 93. It's watching that season. I don't stretch way back into the 80s, but I can remember what Warwick Dunn looked like in Florida State gear as we wore cardinal red and yellow, which I kind of every once in a while I see that throwback and it makes me smile, that old jersey. And I know that 93 season was nearly 40 years ago at this point, as Florida State won its first national title almost 40 years ago in 1993. See what I'm doing? I'm playing the headline game right there.
Mm-hmm.
But now I need y'all to educate me about what Herschel Walker looked like in real time. So I know what he looks like in fuzzy television replays.
It was unbelievable. Do you have any recollection of his NFL, like the Cowboys, like his best years with the Cowboys?
No. Can't say I do. Though the first NFL games, non-Buccaneers games that I can remember, it started with the 49ers and Chargers Super Bowl. That was a snoozer. That's the first game I can truly, non-Buccaneer game that I can remember.
So the Bucs came about at a time when I was first of all, we moved from Holland. My dad was in the military. We moved back to Florida. And the first, fuzzy memories that I have of non-Buck stuff is Steelers Cowboys 21-17, 76 season. I can remember better the 78 season, Steelers 35, Cowboys 31 in the Super Bowl. That, of course, the 70s, an era of the Dallas Cowboys and Pittsburgh Steelers. I have vague memories of that. I can remember players from that era, especially that 78 season. I can really, really remember. But sometimes on this show, and we always date it and stamp it and talk about it, the very distinct difference in our ages comes to pass in a way that is tangible to me. And this is one of those, because I can remember every second of Herschel Walker's career at Georgia, and I can remember every second of his career in the NFL. I remember Herschel Walker with the New Jersey Generals of the USFL. I remember when the Cowboys made the trade and Herschel Walker goes to the Viking. All of it. I can remember all of it. And I can just remember what a monster of a man he was to watch play. Golly, that's weird that you don't share that at all.
I don't. It doesn't register.
Not even the son. You're like, whatever, old man. Get out of here, old man. You're going to tell me about Red Grange? Whatever, old man.
Sure, man.
You're going to bring up the Galloping Ghost and how you watched him?
What I will tell you is during COVID, I was watching some of the 86 Florida State season I could find on YouTube. I'm like, that speed actually probably would translate to today. I genuinely in my mind doubted that what existed before I did would maybe play in modern times.
That's ridiculous. You act like Deion Sanders wasn't fast.
No. Yeah, I saw with my own eyes, but I'm talking like the guy's 23, 24 years old in 1986. I'm like, I don't know, man. That's generations off. What are we doing here? Oversized shoulder pads, weird face masks. But then I watched McManus throw the ball. I'm like, ooh, that's a live arm. That's for real.
Yeah, if we were watching together, I would have been like, sir, you do realize that Bo Jackson played college football before you were alive, and Bo Jackson may be the greatest athlete to ever walk the earth. Spare me this. They really weren't that fast.
I don't know. Navarro Bowman might have been the same thing if he was a running back in the 80s. Navarro Bowman was a freak athlete.
Bo Jackson, I assure you, was freakishly fast. I promise you. It's the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. You know what's funny about that previous conversation? And I'm guilty of this too. I was the great Bob Ryan, Tom, the great Bob Ryan, who you love and got to meet and hang out with, who I got to meet too, but I didn't hang out with it the way that you did, shared a drink out in California with him as you did. For you old school or people, Bob Ryan. For you younger kids in the demo, Bob Ryan was and is a great journalist that worked for years for the Boston Globe and was largely associated with the New England area, although he has covered the NBA better than most across the league for the better part of 50 years. He was also extremely well-educated man. Anyhow, nonetheless, Bob Ryan's a badass. Knows a lot about a lot. And he, one time, was getting into a debate with Bill Simmons about athletes and athleticism and players of yesteryear in various sports. And what you and I were just engaging in is something that has generationally been true of sports fans everywhere. This is the classic grandfather talking to the grandson, father talking to the son, much older brother talking to the younger brother, whatever it might be, where this idea that while it is true, the level of athleticism is better across each generation because of usually gained knowledge. This is experimental in some ways, right? Like you eat certain things, you exercise certain ways. Those ways get improved over time as they learn what works and what doesn't work. And then you get sports-specific training, which is something that was really not always in place. People certainly did learn, if you wanted to run greater distances at a faster rate, how to train yourself to do that, but it got more specific over time. This is where it's fun, and that's why they say it's impossible to compare generations. But one of the pitfalls in that discussion, when we do recognize that bigger, stronger, faster is a thing of today, certainly the linebackers in the last 5 years would largely smoke people if they were just plopped down in 1950s football. I mean, my goodness gracious, they are bigger, stronger, faster. But what it doesn't mean is that there weren't people who were freakishly great for their eras that could, in fact, if dropped into our time, could play and play at a high level and be great. Now, where it gets more nuanced is when you get into these discussions like, Babe Ruth, who was so preternaturally great and an outlier in his own era, that it seems to suggest that even though he was a giant man for his time, whatever it was, 6'4", 250, he would have the requisite strength and size, but it was before integration. So you get into the conversations about what would that have looked like if he played in a more competitive version of Major League Baseball that incorporated all the best players, black, Hispanic, white, you name it, right? All of that is true, and that's a fair discussion. I would argue, I think most baseball people would argue, Babe Ruth still would have been great. Maybe not as great, but he would have been great because he was such an outlier in his era and did things. I mean, he once out-hit, in terms of home runs, the entire American League by himself, the entire American League in a single season. So when you have somebody who does something so transcendent, it's hard not to say that, well, they would have adapted to modern training methods. They would have figured out how to make it work. They were so above and beyond everybody else at that time. I'm going to guess they would have incorporated those things and done well for themselves. Then there's this one, because I never know what to think, because he was a known liar, but he was also a known badass. And there are enough people in our lifetime, your dad, my dad, and others, that watched his entire career. I saw the very tail end of it. Don't really have any vivid memories. Is what was Wilt Chamberlain? What would Wilt Chamberlain be now? We know at his size, at over 7 feet tall, it's a freak to be 7 foot, 285 pounds, and run a 4.6 40, which is documented. He ran a 4.6 40. That's a real thing. It did happen. He had a vertical leap that, depending on who you believe, and that too has been documented, is between 48 and 51 inches. At 7 feet tall, nearly 300 pounds, if you run a 4.6 and you have a vertical in the neighborhood of 50 inches, we're starting to get into the category and discussion of, are you the greatest alien to ever be plopped down on Earth and play sports? Like, nobody should do any of those things. And when you have a season in which you average 50 points a game and they make the rules different because of who you were, all of those things. But remember, he was also dominant in track and field. He was said to have been freakishly strong. He used to work out with Arnold Schwarzenegger. They became friends because they were in the movie Conan the Barbarian. And Schwarzenegger says that at one time, Wilt Chamberlain, even at his age, was every bit as strong as all of the strongman guys that you see today. I don't know how true that is. He was once rumored to bench 500 pounds. Well, if he's benching 500 pounds at 7 feet tall with arms that look like that and run a 4.6 40 with a 50-inch vertical, we're now getting into maybe the greatest athlete that ever lived was long before this current era, right? That kind of freakish athleticism, I don't know. I wish I would have seen him. I wish you could have seen Bo and Herschel, because they were bona fide freaks. And to this day, when we talk about Bo, that throw to peg Harold Reynolds at the plate, maybe the dumbest throw I've ever seen by anybody anywhere doing anything. That is not possible. It's almost like a trick of the camera that he makes that throw. It doesn't even seem real.
Yeah, I think, as my take on Bo, is the baseball stuff is the dividing line. That is the separator for him and other athletes, because it's just so hard to play baseball. Also, we've had a lot of years since Bo. Nobody's run up the side of a wall before or after Bo Jackson did it.
Not as gracefully, anyhow.
No, it's gracefully. It was on pure instinct. And he knew he could do it. Yeah, nobody. That's parkour stuff. That's crazy. I think on the football side, of course, he's an unbelievable player, and he would translate to today. But I think the modern athlete at linebacker, hybrid players, defensive ends that look unlike they've ever looked before in history have caught up to whatever that was. But I don't think those guys can go on a baseball field and hit 500-foot bombs. In fact, I know they can't. And they won't be able to run the outfield like Bo Jackson. That is what made him special. And in his time, of course, he was everything. Like I'm not trying to take away from what he was in his time. I'm just saying I think football evolution has caught up to him a good bit, but not that varied skill set thing. That's stupid.
You know, what's weird is when you watch that Bo Jackson, when they did the 30 for 30 with Bo or whatever that was, or East 60. I can't remember. I get them all confused now. Listening to his high school coaches and the former teammates and how surly he was and he had a stutter and how difficult his life was and grew up poor and all those things. I always wonder, you know, over time, things become mythologized and, you know, somebody saw an incredible athletic feat occur on a random Tuesday, and over time, the myth of what it was grows and grows and grows, and in some ways does a disservice to how great the original thing was, because now it's being talked about in a way that is simply cannot be true, right? You know, it just cannot be true. But you do go back and hear the way people talk about him throwing a baseball, how hard he could throw, and then you see that throw. Obviously, the famed throw from the outfield wall, and he gets a speedster like Harold Reynolds at the plate, and there just doesn't seem to be enough strength in the world to be able to throw the ball that far, that fast on that kind of a line to get a runner of that speed, that caliber. And when you look at it from where the ball landed to where Harold Reynolds is when he makes the turn, it hardly seems possible. And I have to wonder if those legends, those folklores of Bo Jackson throwing rocks at people across the train tracks when he was angry and potentially, you know, having the strength to kill somebody with a rock. Like, you wonder, like, maybe those are real. Maybe some of those throws that he was alleged to have done in a park at a school in those days, that all happened. Because when you see that throw, you think, yeah, maybe.
It's definitely possible. That's why, you know, boxers have lethal weapons for hands and so forth. You know,
yeah, you can go to jail. Yeah.
Well, we all saw weird stuff when we were kids. You know, people that maybe never turned out. Usually, it's the legend of the neighborhood kid who he got unlucky, or he got into drugs,
got
or
hurt, whatever.
a car wreck or whatever. And you're like, oh, what a shame. I'll never forget something that happened in 5th grade. It's a game of dodgeball. And this one kid in our class, his name is Gino Rafero. He works down on the east coast of the state now. He was dead to rights. Here comes 2 dodgeballs, one at his hip, one at his foot. I swear to God, the vertical leap was so insane that he probably could have rested his chin on the tops of his feet. Like, he elevated his knees up
it's the Matrix,
up to yogi status. Like, he was in like a yogi pose, the super squat with the hands, but he jumped up. And I remember that the gym coach stopped class. He goes, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, we all have those moments, but then you realize that somebody grew up with Bo Jackson. And somebody saw those moments, and he probably tore down a basketball goal out of anger. He probably kicked through a door in a way that it made a sound you never heard the rest of your life. I'm sure that somebody saw something with Bo growing up and like, well, and it's at one point you're probably like, that's just Bo. He could do those things. Nobody else can.
Yeah, coaches who see that, you see him running track and you go, oh no, nobody that size should be able to run that fast. This is dangerous. This is, when you lose your breath seeing something like that. We've all seen fast people. We've all seen people who can jump. We've all seen strong people. But when you put it all together and you go, it causes you to lose your breath. Yeah, it's the preternatural description is often used. Come back, wrap up the hour. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio. Got asked yesterday whether or not concerned about a Friday night game against Virginia or a Friday night game against, it's NC State, right? Don't we have 2 of these this year?
Yeah, it's Friday, yep.
And then, of course, the 10:30 game against Stanford, and whether or not we should be worried. I don't, at this juncture, don't feel like I'm all that concerned about whatever happens against Stanford. Like, meaning I don't think they're going to cause much of a problem. But I did want you to say, or want you to know that misery loves company. I don't know if you saw this. Fox scheduled the Michigan State game against USC for an 11 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. on September the 20th. So Michigan State USC is at 11 p.m. I feel like we need to get away from these things, man. Michigan State, that is well, they're not going to win that game in all likelihood, but what are we doing? That's crazy, playing a game asking your student athlete, if you will, to play an 11 p.m. Eastern time kickoff.
I'm asking a paid quasi-professional to do that, and it is the perfect encapsulation of the time we're in. You've got a Midwest team going out to the West Coast for a conference matchup, paid players on a super network because they're trying to own all time slots for 11 o'clock kickoff. Hey, all right, I'll take it. You know, if I'm wired and that 7 o'clock game is good, I'll pivot over to USC and Michigan State. I'm sure it'll be good for a half and no more than a half. But there you go. I get till 12:30. Some good football. Thank you very much, Big Ten.
I'm not angry. I think I would be angry if I were coaching at Michigan State or a player at Michigan State. But as a fan, if you want to start a game at midnight, I don't widen the range of opportunities for me to watch football, and I'm never going to complain. It's not the first time either. This is the second time. Rutgers USC on Fox last October. That game was on a Friday night, however, directly following game one of the Dodgers-Yankees World Series matchup. You remember it now?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Well, that had a strong lead in, if you will. 15.2 million viewers for the World Series game. What Fox ended up doing is keeping that audience for a little while, and they maximized it for that broadcast. Rutgers USC, not supposed to be a good game, drew an audience of over 2 million for its late night broadcast. So they said, okay, not bad. I like the idea. Let's experiment with it again this year. They're doing it on a Saturday night following Arizona State Baylor Big 12 matchup, 7:30 Eastern time on Fox. There's another game, college football game on Fox following game one of this year's World Series as well. Network could opt to schedule another one after game two of the World Series. They're looking to make this a thing, a bleed over audience from one sporting event, hang in there with me, to another, and they're not doing it football to football. They are in some cases. They're doing it baseball to football, and they're seeing what works and what catches on. And they've moved from Friday to Saturday.
Yeah, well, here's the other thing is if you just think about the body clock of the athlete itself, this is way different than the NFL. You've got big noon kickoff, Oregon Northwestern this weekend. So that's a 9 a.m. kick if you live in Oregon. I'm not talking about the fans, just talking about how you ratchet up your routine to peak. And I'm not trying to defend the 2014 playoff committee. Don't get me wrong there. But that means that Oregon could play an 11 o'clock game Pacific time, right? If Fox is willing to schedule an 11 o'clock for these other teams, these other locations. So you potentially, as a head coach, need to prepare your team to be able to play body clock 9 a.m., which means that you begin your preparation at 7 a.m. And as late as, because I'm living on Pacific time, 8 p.m. body clock with a 5 p.m. ramp up. On the other side of it, if I'm Michigan State, I need to be prepared to play an 11 a.m. game, my time, and a 10 p.m. game.
10 p.m. game, yeah.
My time. So 11 hours difference in terms of kickoff for the body clock of the athlete, whereas the NFL individual is but a fraction of that 11 hours. That is a different challenge that you have to be able to handle, but that's also why the Big Ten payouts are such big bucks, because you command multiple time zones.
Yeah, and it's also why you would think in the not too distant future, Tom, that we will learn a little bit more about just how spread out they really want to get to. How far do they really want to go? Which includes maybe, a Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson acquisition, or a Miami, Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson acquisition, or something of that ilk. I know we keep throwing North Carolina in there, and I feel like we really ought not. We'll see. But they're always mentioned. I think if I'm the Big Ten, I might look at Virginia instead.
At least they are what they are. I like people who promise at a certain level and deliver at a certain level. Virginia knows that they are Rutgers. North Carolina.
Yeah, they're better than, let's go easy. They're better than Rutgers.
I don't know. Are they?
Well, I don't mean this year, but their history is better than that of Rutgers.
I guess.
It is.
I don't know. I feel like the Schiano reign.
It's the only window of time where Rutgers has been relevant at all.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that might be the most bright and shining example for both programs over the last 25 years in terms of on-field aptitude.
Well, there was a moment in time where Virginia played Georgia Tech, and it was a battle of top 5 teams. But
yeah,
I don't know. You got to go back a ways, Tom. I'll grant you.
The point being for the executive would be Virginia knows what they are. They deliver on that. North Carolina fancies themselves Clemson, and they're more like Wake, so.
That we agree on 100%. Hour number 2, forthcoming. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show. Welcome in. Ballsmick Wednesday rolls on. Thanks for being here. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. Twitter, it's at J Cameron Show. 93.3 FM, locally owned, operated. Thanks for supporting it. Warchant TV, same. On the YouTube channel there, we just continue to grow, and we appreciate your support for everything that we're trying to do. I wanted to start with something. I keep touching on it, but it's a wonder what's happening right now with Florida State basketball recruiting. I'm going to tie this into Florida State football and tie this into Mike Norvell and Florida State recruiting and just a general Florida State theme here. Yesterday on Headlines, and I've mentioned this before on the JCS, and Tom and I have had these discussions, how they're aiming to have a top 10 recruiting class for 2026 and how they think it's entirely possible to do it. And I continue to be amazed. But if you remember back when we had Luke Laux on here on the Jeff Cameron Show, he was talking about the work that he had to get to, that he had to hit the ground running, that there was going to be a concerted effort to kind of get out in the community and do more things that got people in touch with this basketball program again. Now, Tom, you and I both knew that that's not only smart and it's a good PR move, and all coaches, I think, should engage in that sort of back and forth with the city and the community. But it's also smart because you're going to have to ask some of those people in said city for money. And so, it's smart all the way around. But there was clearly a plan in place. And then during that same conversation, he talked about how many guys reached out to him that he's known over the years in the state of Florida and how he needed to recruit the state of Florida very well. And that obviously beyond Florida, but he wanted to start there. And they were going to have to work a certain way. And he had to get to some really difficult decisions, that there were a lot of qualified coaches, both in and out of the state, that he's either gotten to know over the years because he played with or played against them, knew them from his days in Clearwater as a high school player, or were connected in the coaching ranks in the AAU that he's gotten to know over the years, guys that he's worked with in the National Basketball Association, people he met over in Europe. He had a very big Rolodex and had to go through 100 plus voicemails of people who were very interested in being a part of the Luke Laux time and tenure here in Tallahassee as the new Florida State basketball coach. And he said the hard part was going to be to sift through all those emails and voicemails and have to make some very difficult decisions, and that he owed them the time of day to call them all back, because these were all people that he both considered as peers, but also friends and also coaches in the profession whom he admired. And so understanding that and then needing to be able to talk to all of them, he had to parse that down to a small list of people. Well, if you look at the way they're recruiting currently, you can tell that he not only was able to tap into the coaching acumen of his staff members that he did hire and that he siphoned through and brought in, but he also knew that there was a recruiting element that was going to be vital here. And Michael Fly is a big part of that. And if you read the article that came out on warchant.com by Matt Lasser yesterday, it's about the 4-star player in Colin Paul that Florida State was able to get. Colin Paul talked about Michael Fly reaching out to him as early as his time as a sophomore in high school, and how that they've really stuck with him the whole time. Well, you can bet that Luke Laux had a really good understanding of who he was hiring in Michael Fly and who Michael Fly was connected to. If you think about it, FSU has commitments to Marcus Ponder, Brandon Bass, Jason Lopez, and a lot of that has to do with the assistant coaches that Luke hired, but also Luke's pitch, which is that of NBA coaching experience and preparation for professional basketball. And they hoped that it would transcend beyond whatever money limitations they had to offer these kids. It was sort of a, hey, look, if you're an elite player like a Marcus Ponder, if you're a top 75 forward or guard, top 30, top 20, power forward, you're probably going to have a chance to make a little bit more money than we can offer you currently. But whatever we can offer you, we can make up in experience, we can make up in relationships, we can make up in preparation for an NBA career along with connections. And boy, has it resonated, because I know that quest continues. You can read that article, go to warchant.com. They are in, Tom, on two or I'm just going to say this, and I don't want to jinx it, but I'm talking to people. They're in on 2 or 3 more wow names. They've already got what is considered in some places to be the number 1 class for that 2026 campaign. They've got 2 or 3 more on the line. This is so far above and beyond our wildest dreams early on here. I don't know, none of us do, how this is going to turn out and how many of them they will keep. But there is no question that the modus operandi, the way that he went about applying a plan and hiring people, has changed the fortunes on a recruiting front of what's possible for Florida State. And the reason it resonates and it's important, a couple of reasons. First of all, they won't be great this year. And I fear people are hearing all of the nuggets, all of the great points of good news where this player commits and Marcus Ponder commits and another kid commits and he's a top 50 player or a top 10 player, and they think it's attributable to whatever they're going to see this year. And that's not the case. What you're going to see this year was makeshift, on the run. I'm coming in, putting together a staff, revamping my roster. And that's not going to equal top 10 anything. That's going to be, all right, how do they play? Are they better than they're predicted to be, which I think they will be? Is it a fun style for you to go watch over at the TLC Double C when they do play? I think it will be. Yeah, I do. Do they do the right thing? Do they play hard? Do they play fast? Do they play, do they do things that make you want to watch? I think that's what this year is. And maybe they punch above their weight class a little bit this year. It's the following year where you see the fruits of all of this recruiting, where you're going to go, oh my goodness gracious, they've got a bunch of all-stars here.
Well, I think it's good that you keep waving the flag for this, because nobody cares yet, and you should. And you really should.
That's my point, man. There's something special going on with Florida State basketball.
I'm looking at the numbers. Like, we put out a Colin Paul commitment video last week. It did nothing, and it shouldn't.
It's football season. It's football season.
It's football, and people are really pumped because we're good. And Luke is benefiting from that as well. Nice timing for the cool factor to return to Florida State football and have a stadium like the Alabama game stadium, where he can bring the kids in there and say, look at this. A lot better than, say, last year's Cal game. Both were wins, felt very different.
Correct.
Resonated very differently. So now he's got the weapon of interested fans, a cool place to bring kids. You don't think he's going to do it again for the Miami game? Of course he's going to do it for the Miami game, and he should. He now has the ear of people who are happy about football in the money community. And I'm sure most basketball and other head coaches will tell you that when football is good, maybe the spending is contagious. Oh, you need a little money too? Okay. But when football is bad, maybe those money folks are a little bit more tight-fisted for the other sports on campus. But yeah, I think it's a good reminder here about the type of swing that he's making and the type of contact he's making with the ball as well on those big swings, because I'm telling you, people don't know. As much as you are bringing this up, people don't know the work that he's doing. The numbers say that nobody cares right now, and you should, and you really should.
Well, they will, though. They will when the time is right. They will. And they don't have to right now. I'm sure that, if Luke's listening to this, he's saying, whoa, Jeff, yeah, it'd be cool if they did. Yeah, they will, Luke. I got you. But, it's not my job. I'm not a PR firm. And I've ripped our programs, Lord knows, to the chagrin of many. And I have also praised our programs when they're due that, and everything in between. I've tried to be pretty fair in all of these things. I get some things wrong, get some things right, and some are, in the gray area. Got it. That's the way this business works when you're tasked with an opinion on a daily basis. And sometimes you don't have every ounce of the information that you need. Sometimes you're made aware of something down the line, whatever it might be. I'm not doing this to wave the flag for the sake of doing it. I'm telling you, these numbers, those kids that have said yes to Florida State so far, that's all verifiable. You can go read that, look at that, and see who they are, what they're ranked and what they're projected to be and all. That's not a matter of opinion necessarily. I mean, those numbers are what they are. So he is getting yeses from very, very well thought of recruits for the 2026 season. There's no doubt. Recruiting class. But what I'm saying is that I'm in awe of the process and the way he went about it and the application of it for now. I think that's worth documenting along the way, especially on a bye week. It's worth documenting after, on the heels of another commitment.
Yes.
And then when you hear that kid say the hows and whys of what he was looking at and why he committed, it's worth documenting. Now, I said to you at the beginning of this segment that I would somehow tie this in to thoughts on Florida State football and Florida State football recruiting. And here's how I'm going to do it. It's been noted by many of you out there. Tom and I have said this as well off the air, just talking to each other. I think it's been observed by anybody who's got eyes, for that matter. Mike Norvell just looks and seems happier and healthier. Now, you might say, how could he not be, Jeff? Compared to a year ago, he was in charge of a dumpster fire of his own making and knew early on he was in deep trouble. See the famed photo. Early on, knew he was in deep trouble. And having that look wash over him that he was in charge of a disaster, what was interesting about that look was it was panicked because there was so much more football to play. It was, oh no, this won't work. This can't be fixed right now, and I've got 10 more games to play. And there's not a lot I can do. Now, we could get into the weeds about what could have been done and more of what should have been done. And everybody has an opinion on that. But they were not going to be the team that he had hoped they could be, and he knew it early. We found that out. That as currently comprised, this wasn't going to work, and that's why the look was the look. This horrified, oh my goodness, this isn't it. This isn't it. So I tie it into this. He makes the changes. He recognizes this can't be. I've got to radically alter everything about what I'm doing. And that includes my own role. And my new role is going to be that of a CEO. I'm going to set down my ego and I'm going to hand over the reins of my offense, something that I've made my bones on, to Gus Malzahn, and he's going to take over complete control of the offense. And it is clearly Gus's offense. Now, Mike has a say in weekly preparation, and Mike can certainly on fourth down, like the game against Alabama, say we are going or we're not going. Ultimately, those things are his decisions. But the entirety of what's going on here is Gus Malzahn's offense and Herb Hand's offensive line and the transfers that they've brought in, whom they assessed, and Mike gets credit for that too. And this defense is Tony White's defense. Most assuredly, it is Tony White's defense in the way they play, how they're taught, all of it. It's Tony White. Does Mike have a say in certain aspects of it? Sure. But has he given over the reins to Tony? He has. I think that's at the root of why he looks better and feels better. And I also think it's potentially massively beneficial, not just to this team this year and the players on this team this year, because he has the freedom to be able to properly monitor and put his hands on situations and his eyes on situations that need it most in a given day or week or time or Saturday for that matter. But you know where else it could greatly benefit him? In recruiting. It could greatly benefit him, the process of bringing in the right coaches at the right time and giving them the autonomy to do their job, frees Mike up to be, if he'll embrace it, if he'll improve upon the way he views it, and I think he has and will, because he showed a willingness to do it in the other areas of which I speak, he can become, and maybe for the first time ever, he can become a very good recruiter. He's free to do so. He's free to spend the time that he couldn't spend before or wouldn't, however you want to look at it, or wouldn't, in recruiting. The order of operations and whom you surround yourself with matters greatly. We're seeing it in Luke Loux's basketball program with the assistant coaches that he hired, the connections that they have, and the resources and the means by which to reach out to these kids above and beyond Florida State's weight class in recruiting most years is on display right now. What's also on display right now is a turnaround from Florida State football from a season ago to where we are now. And might we see it in the world of recruiting? I say so because they'll gain momentum on the field, and Mike's availability off of it has changed now too because he has the freedom.
Yeah, there's a few things to monitor there. I agree. A lot of things point back in Florida State's direction for momentum. Of course, the football on the field is the most important thing. There's no two ways about it. So we're going to
win games.
That's an assumption. The rev share does bring down the need to outbid a little bit. Doesn't do it a ton when you're talking about a swath of 20 players that you really want to bring in a given class. But maybe for the top 3 or 4, you don't have to get into a crazy bidding war because you can always dedicate rev share dollars versus NIL dollars if you need to. So it doesn't become crowdsourcing on the level that it used to be a crowdsource issue. So that helps, I think, a little bit as well. Doesn't fix the issue, but it helps. The new facility helps as well, the football-only facility, because it's brand new for Florida State. And again, as you're getting towards a market that's correcting itself on the prices, you do need some differentiators, and the football-only facility helps you as well. I think his time and his time management does help. I do find myself interested to see how the offensive class does with an offensive coordinator who does not want to hit the trail. And look, if Gus is going to kick ass on Saturdays, I think we'll take it and we'll work around it because that all 22 is going to speak for itself. Those kids coming to campus and talking with Gus and seeing what the offense does is going to speak for itself. And so will that meeting that they have with the old man in the back office. But I am interested to see how it shakes out specifically on the offensive side when it comes to recruiting, when the OC, who does have the it is within the rules for the offensive coordinator to be able to hit the road more, does not want to do it. How does Mike Norvell account for that? Because he can't himself hit the road like crazy. So is there any impact there? It's never a bad thing for a head coach to have more time, though.
Correct.
It's never a bad thing. And what I'll be interested in to see, we can't answer this now because we also got to play 10 more games and see if we're consistent at a high level. But has Mike Norvell started a trend? Has he started a new path forward and a new set of habits that's always going to be? Or let's say if Gus left in a season and a half, would Mike return to play calling? Because sometimes head coaches have an itch to do that as well. So I get we're trying to live in the moment, but there are some things that we can't know the answer to quite yet. And my hope is that what Mike sees is, oh, God, this is a revelation that my Monday through Sunday looks like this on the calendar. This is so much better. I hope that means that he takes this place and makes it his normal instead of, well, we needed to put a fire out, so I needed to attend to some things, but I'll return back to what I've always done after the fire is put out. That's going to be fascinating to watch, and I think recruiting is a potential consequence of that one way or the other.
So I do think it's interesting, since you brought it up, to dabble into reading the future a little bit here. The most interesting aspect of that with the offense, Tom, is not only, as you say, you have an older offensive coordinator who's not inclined to hit the road and recruit. He's just excited to run his offense, implement his offense, call his offense on game day. Got all of that. It was always going to be a bit of a challenge because of the offense that they run, period, to get the elite players to come here. Now, you might say, well, it shouldn't be for the offensive line. Okay, fair enough. Right. This offense shouldn't be a deterrent to an offensive lineman. He can show his wares in a way that helps him make the National Football League ultimately, right? He can do that. Some aspects of this offense don't necessarily do that for certain kinds of players. So quarterback in particular, you might say, this is not an offense that the NFL looks upon favorably to get a read on whether or not a player's success at quarterback translates on Sunday. It doesn't. It's not ideal for that assessment. Doesn't mean it can't, doesn't mean that they can't, but it's not ideal. There are more pro-friendly offenses being run throughout college football, more complex passing games, etc. And so we know that. So it was always going to be a challenge. But how do the successes of this year impact that? Because I think if Deuce goes on to have the kind of season we're hoping he's going to have, and if Tommy continues to play well within the scheme and has a great season and puts up numbers because of what we're asking him to do, are you able to offset the fact that those who see their future at wide receiver or quarterback don't want to look at an offense like this? Are you able to offset that by finding two truly special players every cycle that say, well, if I'm the guy and I am a mobile quarterback like the kid who committed to Houston, young man, Houston, like that kid, does he now look at Houston, but then turn and look again at Florida State and say, well, what would I do in that offense? What would the numbers be for me in that offense? Are they the kind of transcendent numbers that mean an NFL team will take a greater look at me because it's being done at Florida State to a greater extent with better athletes around me than they would at Houston? I would dare say yes. And if Deuce goes on to go crazy at wide receiver and he's showcased, now you get the elite receiver who says, well, I want a more pro-style friendly offense. Do you? Do you? Or do you just want to make a ton of plays and score a ton of touchdowns? Because I'll tell you what, the pros will take a chance on that too.
Yeah, I think that's where Deuce's production in game 2 was a great sign, because you're trying to set the tone for future recruiting classes at receiver. Now, they've done well at receiver this cycle. Like,
they have.
Before they had their little late summer surge, receiver was one of the places that you go, well, they're kind of fine there. I think they're on a good path. The thing I'd say about the quarterback conversation, I find it not critical that you get a top flight 4-star or 5-star quarterback. It is nice, but it is not critical, because if you take a look, even in recent history, like Joe Burrow as a national champion is everything that you want as a professional prospect. Of course, that was 6 years ago. But if you look since then, the quarterbacks that have led teams to national championships, it's been Mac Jones, Stetson Bennett ×2, J.J. McCarthy, and what's his face last year from Ohio State. Not exactly dudes that are kicking down the door of the first night of the NFL draft in terms of draft status for professional prospects, but they were good enough college quarterbacks. And also, if college is going to be trending towards back to a little bit more of power football, Michigan's offense, Penn State's offense, Notre Dame's offense, if you're starting to see a little bit more of that, which offense is more fun to run at that point? Is it those, or is it Gus's offense? Like, you may be seeing, as the pendulum swings back a little bit in all of football, the fullback, I know you talked about this, at the professional level is really back in the conversation. And now you are seeing ground and pound in college football make its return for the first time since LSU and Alabama were playing for a national championship. All of a sudden, Gus's offense is fun again.
Well, they're trying to take the game back. They're tired of defenses living in dimes and nickels. That's what they're tired of. I mean, and it's almost, we know this, that things are cyclical in football always. And you've seen it over the years. The advent of the spread or tempo or run and shoot, those are all born out of necessity to what defenses were doing. And then in turn, they adjust, and then defenses have to adjust. And when they do, at some point, you're going to swing all the way back to an old school looking offense. And that's what we are seeing now. The return of the fullback and the extensive role that an H-back or / tight end plays now is all because they're tired of defenses playing too high or playing in dime all the time. And they're like, no, man, you want to run that? I'm going to run Derrick Henry right at you. And I'm going to make your corners come up and tackle a 240-pound man. I bet you get another linebacker on the field real quick, won't you? We're done with all this. You and your safeties in corners. You're going to come out here with bigger packages, and then that'll free us up to throw the ball again.
Hey, now, but what that means is for a high school kid, they look at Gus's offense and they're saying, "I think I'd rather do that. That looks like a whole heap of fun. These guys are smiling, having fun. They're opening it up. They're being explosive. They're being aggressive instead of 3 yards in the cloud of dust." So at that point, hopefully, football as a sport is helping you become even more relevant than you would have been when everybody was doing power spread last decade. Everybody was doing it. And Gus's offense at that point seemed played out. Maybe, just maybe, the timing of all of this is lining up to give yourself the best possible chance beyond Mike Norvell's time management, but also the way the sport seems to be trending and how they're using different position groups.
Fun conversation. I hope that's right. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. It would seem, at least on the surface, that Bill Belichick is more concerned about the possibility of making more money as he gets older. Bill Belichick and his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, of course, made headlines throughout the offseason, partly because she looks to be controlling his life in every facet, also because she's annoying. They filed applications for several trademarks, including 4 with rights held, according to the courts, by the New England Patriots. Each of those 4 applications reportedly refused by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. ESPN pointed out this story that a Hudson-led TCE rights management group tried to acquire trademarks in April, Tom, for "Do Your Job." They were denied. "Ignore the Noise." They were denied. "The Bellustrator." They were denied.
What? Who has the Bellustrator?
I don't know, but it's the Patriots, is what the courts say. So Bill's version of the Bellustrator is the Patriots. And finally, no days off. Now, I could have told Jordan and Bill there was no chance they were going to get no days off. People have been saying that stupid-ass thing forever. I would point out that when I see people wearing shirts that say no days off, I say, who are you trying to impress? Yeah, everybody needs a day off. Stop it.
And usually when you see that, they are either doing something leisurely or not at their job, right? That's not what they wear. That's not their uniform to go to the office for work, right?
Right. No, it's not a proud, grandiose entrance to the workplace where there are no days off shirt.
I mean, even if you're wearing
Sunday at noon.
Even if you're wearing that to the gym, are you paid to be at the gym right now? Because if you are, you're taking time away from your work. That's not a day off.
It was comical that I saw he was trying to do that. Ignore the noise. Hell, didn't we get college coaches saying that 20 years ago?
Eliminate the clutter.
Like, ignore the noise. Okay. I would love to hear the argument. My husband, Bill Belichick, many years ago came up with the phrase, ignore the noise. You sure? Because I think people have been saying that maybe since the 1400s. I don't ignore the noise has been uttered by any number of leaders at any number of workplaces for a very long time as a means to try to get you to better focus on, making them money. That's kind of how that works typically. Anyhow, that too was denied. And it was interesting because in 2009, the Patriots trademarked the Bellustrator, Tom. How about that? Do you think you'd be pissed a little bit if you were Bill and you found out all these years later that, the Patriots trademarked the Bellustrator in 2009?
I guess, so did it go on the Jumbotron, like between quarters? It's like, here's the Bellustrator of how we just kicked the Dolphins' ass again for the 16th straight week. Maybe that's where would they use it? Unless he was using it on a coach's show himself. I'm just wondering when that would be implemented. I
just think it's funny. You can just picture Bob Kraft. Hey, listen, Steve, we should really trademark that Bellustrator stuff before Bill tries to make all that extra money. Screw him. You know what I'm saying? That's what? Don't tell him. We're just going to trademark the Bellustrator. Oh, okay. Sounds good, coach. Or boss. No days off was also trademarked in 2017 by the Patriots, and Do Your Job was trademarked without Bill knowing as well. They applied to trademark, did Belichick and Jordan, Chapel Bill, the Belichick Way, the All Belichick Team. Those trademarks didn't have conflicting marks per ESPN, so it seems reasonable that they'll be able to do it.
And make $0 off of all of it. Congratulations. Nobody will buy that crap anymore. Chapel Bill might have sold pretty well before that first game, but you think you're going to get future sales off of this?
By the way, one final thing. Are we getting the early indicators that he's nuts? The whole banning of the Patriots staff from anything to do with North Carolina stems from Belichick believing that he's not welcome at the Patriots facility. And Belichick said about that, it's clear that I'm not welcome around the Patriots, New England's facility, so they're not going to be welcome to ours. Doesn't that sound like paranoid and nuts? And if you heard Vrabel, he's like, no, Bill can come anytime he wants. I'd love to see him. Love coach, got no problem. He's losing it, dude.
I think he's losing it, and he's got a caretaker who is masking as a girlfriend. I think that everybody kind of sees that. The only question is it a Hugh Hefner-style relationship, or is this something else?
Wait a minute. You don't think they're in love?
I think he's in love. But I also think every day around 9:30 in the morning, it's take your pills. Make sure that you remember things today, Bill. All right, go on out there and go get them, honey.
Oh, I think that those pills would be to forget things, Tom. I don't think she's trying to enhance Bill's memory. I think she's trying to soften his grasp on reality every day so that when they embark on these legal endeavors, she can make sure a certain percentage comes her way above and beyond what would be reasonable to a sound mind anyhow.
Well, that's fair, but look, if you think that the well is running dry, that's when you stop giving him the pills that help. But if you think that you've got another 5 years of being able to leech off of this relationship, then you keep him in just enough good condition that his superiors can't fire him for cause. That's the thing you got to be careful about here. Because if you try to sabotage this thing too quick, then you run out of money. It's all gone.
Who does North Carolina have this week? I'm telling you, it's must-see TV every week now with this, how long this grand experiment will last,
the Spiders of Richmond, 3:30 p.m.
There was a time, Tom, back in the day where this would be a very dangerous matchup for the Tar Heels. Richmond was famous for the kinds of upsets that they could pull off, and I always loved the Spiders logo. They're not that anymore.
Yeah, but that line's dangerous. You ready to guess what it is?
24.5. 21.5.
No, sir.
What did Richmond do last week? What am I missing? Is this 30.5? Is this what?
I don't know. Now, this is AI telling me. I'm trying to run down the actual answer.
17.5?
That's 8 points.
Oh, no.
North Carolina -8.
8 points against Richmond?
Tar Heels are favored by 8 points. I've got that from two different sources. Yes.
Games are not played on paper, nor are they always correctly projected by Las Vegas. See Alabama as a 14-point favorite over Florida State. I get it. The lines are set. We understand that, you can bet on either side of that line. If it was set in stone, then we wouldn't watch the games. But if I'm a North Carolina fan and I wake up and I check the lines, and early on a Monday morning, I see that Richmond is only an 8-point underdog to North Carolina.
So something's up, because I've got articles from 2 days ago and 1 day ago quoting 7 and 8, and then now the line's turned off everywhere. So something screwy there. But it was documented earlier in the week that it was just at or above a touchdown.
Buddy, that is kind of nuts, right?
So's Bill.
I'm just saying, whatever. It's North Carolina, screw them. But there are Tar Heel fans today who are like, we're 7 points favorites over freaking Richmond? Why do we spend $10 million on this old bastard? What are we doing here? This is ridiculous. Every day another dumb headline. And we're struggling to beat the likes of Charlotte and Richmond, getting blown out at home, prime time for the nation to watch. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. You can take this with a grain of salt, as you can anything this time of year. Tommy Castellanos and others have entered the conversation according to certain Heisman polls. I saw one of the latest was that of Robert Griffin III. But I'll give you this. Byron Brown listed number 1 on Robert Griffin III's Heisman list. You guys know who Byron Brown is, right? It's the starting quarterback at USF. I will tell you, if they beat Miami, are we going to – maybe we'll all have him number 1 on our list. He's got Tommy Castellanos at number 2, and he's got Carson Beck at number 3. I will tell you that if the start of this year, I'd said, Tom, I'll tell you what, buddy, Byron Brown, Castellanos, and Beck. Those are my guys right out the gates. Top 3 in the Heisman after a couple weeks of the season, don't you think? Not many would have gone along with that. Maybe Carson Beck, because we do know that when he's good, he's really good.
What I tell you is that means that September and October football in the state of Florida is unbelievable because you got a little carousel here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, since these early season Heisman Trophy lists or rankings don't mean anything, you can really have anybody there. But if you're only going to base it on who'd you beat and how well did you play in those games, that list isn't terrible. That list is not terrible at all. It's that is resume based to a certain extent, and it's not all numbers. If you're little old USF and you have lesser personnel and you've beaten Boise State like a drum, and you turned around and went to the swamp and beat UF at night in Gainesville, yeah, the quarterback is going to get a lot of credit. And for Castellanos, who played so well against Alabama, he only played not even 2 full quarters for FSU this last week, but he put up gaudy numbers in those 2 quarters. So if it's just going to be who have you beaten and numbers, yeah, he's on the short list. And Carson Beck has looked every bit what they had hoped he would be when he went to Miami. I don't know, hoped, but we're going to watch closely to see, is he healthy? It's the whole thing with him. Is he healthy? Because if he's healthy, he's pretty damn good, or he can be really damn good. Right now, Carson Beck looks like a problem. He looks really good. We'll see. This is another reason that as we look ahead, just think how great this matchup can be. I will say this. Tommy Castellanos figures to have big numbers in the next football game that Florida State plays. At that point, they'll be 3-0. They'll be a consensus top 10 team. He will have put up gaudy numbers. The win over Alabama will still resonate. The following game, they play against Virginia on the road. That's an eminently winnable football game. I would think that he should have a good day. We just saw Virginia's defense give up 35 points to NC State. So I would think that Florida State should have some success offensively, trying to be fair. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Florida State will be in the top 10 and they'll be undefeated if that happens. They're favored certainly to be that. He will have put up good numbers. If Carson Beck, in turn, beats this undefeated USF team and then beats Florida, he too will be talked about in the same vein, and Miami will be in the top 10 as well. And that matchup will have not only a larger-than-life feel to it, and game day will be here, but those 2 quarterbacks will be firmly entrenched in the conversation about who wins the Heisman Trophy. It doesn't mean either of them will. Doesn't mean that it's even legit. It just means that's what the conversation is going to be about, for sure.
Yeah, well, you've got a launch point this weekend, too, for Miami's game against USF because of the 2 potentials and them going head-to-head on the football field against the opposing defenses. It's probably something worth talking about tomorrow as we preview the games. I'll get it back to Tommy. But USF's offensive numbers against Florida were actually pretty impressive. I didn't realize this. In such a low-scoring game, if you break it down, they actually kind of were the better offense, even with some of the things that Lagway missed. But for Tommy's purposes, yeah, I mean, you're going to rack up pass yardage next week. Little to no on the ground, I would think, especially, look, you've gotten 2 games of tape as to what he is on the ground with his legs, and he used them last week, but you've got a short week coming up against Virginia. So I would have to imagine that beyond the overmatched opponent thing, you've got a governor on this if you're Gus, because you got a short week after the game against Kent. So you really need to make sure that Tommy's in a good spot there. I can't wait to go back and watch. I've never said this in my life. I can't wait to go back and watch Virginia and NC State to see exactly what the hell happened in that game, because it was an offensive slugfest. But I don't know if it was for good reasons and good offense, or if it was poor defense and sloppy play and ill-timed penalties. I'm looking forward to seeing what that is. But I would imagine, just as you're saying, that Tommy's going to go on the road at Virginia and put up some type of significant numbers. You just never know what the run-pass splits are going to be week to week. And I think that's going to be the fun of getting into conference play, to see when push comes to shove. Is this a situation where you've got a ton of wide-open receivers because they're stacking against the run? Or is it that they need to prove that Tommy's legs are going to be a part of the game plan early, and that opens up things for the pass game down the stretch? I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch, though.
Circling back very quickly, just the numbers that you talk about as it pertains to Brown, Byron Brown. He had 329 total yards, was 23 of 36 for 263 and a touchdown, accounted for 53 of the team's 87 yards on the final drive when they had to have it. The final 3 plays were him running at just over 4 yards per carry in order to set up the Grammatica chip shot. And, you go look at what Golish, his own coach, said. I read those quotes after the game. Somebody asked him, do you think that he's, does he deserve to be in the conversation for the Heisman? And he said, well, look, all I really know is that he's playing quite well. He was asked, is he one of the best college football players that I've ever been around? Yes, he is. He goes on to say he's mentally and physically tough. He's operating at a really good clip. If you ask Byron, though, he'll tell you he's got a ton to work on, and that's what I like most about him. I kind of feel like that those descriptors fit Tommy a little bit. If you were to ask us about him so far, right? Is he operating at a great clip? Yes. Have the results been there? Sure. But if you talk to Tommy, he's going to tell you that they got work to do. Which is the kind of attitude you want to hear.
It's predictable for Byram in this sense. I didn't realize his numbers from 2 years ago. They're outstanding.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good player.
Like last year, I'm assuming that was an injury thing. I wasn't watching a whole lot of other football because I was on Saturdays because I was hurt. I was down, man. I was
hurt. Yeah.
He threw 132 passes last year, and he only had 68 carries. So my assumption is he got hurt at some point.
Yeah.
But 2 seasons ago, also not paying attention to USF because we were awesome for 2 different reasons. I'm not watching Bulls football. But in 2023, he completed 65% of his passes through 426 times. He had 3,200 yards, 26 touchdowns against 11 interceptions for a rating of 144.7, and he ran 203 times for 809 yards, which tells me after sack yardage, this guy's pushing 1,000 yards rushing, 65% completions, and a 26-11 touchdown ratio through the air. That's to say nothing of the 11 touchdowns he ran for on the ground. 2 years ago, he was a total badass.
So I like him. And here's the funny thing about what happens with players that are dual threats like this and dynamic. A lot of times they'll get that early Heisman push because of the total yardage that they're accounting for. And obviously, if the teams are winning, that goes a long way too. But also because that's who they are, I usually don't think that they're really in the running unless they have an overwhelmingly good team around them. Because at some point, you're going to get dinged. And if we're going to have the honest conversation about where Florida State's going and where we want to be and what has to happen, the truth is Tommy, to even be considered a Heisman candidate, which I said before the year I didn't think he could be because of the way that they'll call plays, the aforementioned way that you'll use him in games in which you're winning and you pull him and you don't want him to run as much in games where it's lopsided. He won't be able to amass the numbers that they need for him to be a season-long Heisman Trophy, a realistic Heisman Trophy winner. Doesn't mean he can't be on that list of 10 to 20 people that they talk about all year long, because he can definitely be that if Florida State keeps winning and they use him and the total yardages that he's going to amass will be impressive. Just don't turn the ball over, Tommy. Just don't turn the ball over and you'll be in that conversation. But I really worry that, because again, in the biggest of games, you're going to have to run them in a similar vein to the way you ran them against Alabama. You're going to have to do that, I think, against Miami, Tom. I think you're going to have to do that against Clemson for sure. Who knows at the end of the year with Florida, we'll see what they are. But you're going to have to – you may even have to do it against the Pitts or Virginia Techs of the world. He's going to have to do it a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe he makes it through the whole season. Guys do. It does happen. But, golly, you do worry that he will – you can't coach that way, but you can think it. From out here.
Yes, of course. And he did manage to make it through 2 years ago at 1,000 yards, and he was healthy enough to handle those moments. I agree that it's the sequencing of the games. It's spread out right now. You got Alabama, then it was spread out. Virginia, I don't think you're going to need it, but you're going to use it a little bit. Miami, you're going to need it. And then Pitt, you might actually legitimately need it. So there's a pocket of 3 games where I think it has to be an absolute part of the offense. And then I think you're rightly pointing out that Clemson, Virginia Tech back-to-back as well is a sequence where you're going to need it in back-to-back weeks. However, you could have had Murderer's Row and you had 5 games in a row in which you were going to need him. The schedule does space out nicely in that regard for recovery purposes, because after the Miami Pitt sequence, you're looking at Stanford bye week Wake. Come on now. You should be fine to not have to use him that extra 6 times a game on the ground. And then after Virginia Tech, it's a short week against NC State, and who knows what the hell Florida is going to be at that point. So it is laid out and spaced out a little bit for you there. But also the deception on the ground of all of the end arounds and the reverses and all that kind of stuff, that acts as its own weapon that Florida State can use. And it's not like Sperry or Brock aren't totally mobile. Like, they've got mobility enough to them that they'll keep you honest.
I get so excited about whatever play we're going to see. Whatever play it is we're going to see off that reverse that we get right now with Micah. As soon as that gets called, we're going to be like, there it is, Eureka. He couldn't wait to do that. We've been waiting on it. Because you can see all the options, and we talk about it. I think many in the fan base are talking about it as well. It's Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant.